Hey everyone, thanks for dropping by. And if you're new, I'm your host, Jonah. Welcome to the Blue Collar Enlightenment Show, where we learn new things every episode through conversations with guests from all around the globe. Make sure to hit that subscribe button so you can keep up with the journey. Enjoy the episode. Welcome, Dan Dluzneski, to the Blue Collar Enlightenment Show. I appreciate you coming on and taking the time, especially to talk about a subject that we're going to bring up that's kind of important in today's society. And it's a downer that we have to talk about it, but it is definitely a subject that needs to be talked about. And that is school safety during shootings and things of that nature. And so can you kind of give us a little bit of background on you? You were in the Secret Service, and so that I want to see where that ties into your advocacy for this.
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me on. I appreciate that. And I hopefully that your audience will get something out of this. I started back in the 80s with the Secret Service. Started with the end of Reagan's term, and I finished up with Obama's term. So a little over 24 years. And during that time, I had different positions. Fortunately, I was able to stay in Washington, D.C. the entire time. I was with the Uniform Division of the Secret Service, which was a specialized unit. We had both federal police powers and city police powers, metropolitan city police powers. So it was kind of a neat position. But the specialized position is what I liked also, because I was able to get into canine. And I had a bomb dog. His name was Korak. Now you'll see that in my email. That's why his name is in there. And we got to go ahead of the president and, do bomb work. And he's also bite trained. So he was dual trained at the time. They got away from that. They have two separate divisions that deal with that now, just strictly bomb and strictly bite work. So I was fortunate and able to do that. So it was a great career. Has its ups and downs like anything else. And when I retired, I came down here to Florida, and I was just going to take it easy, sit on a beach, and that was going to be it. And that lasted about 3 months. As you know, with an alpha personality, it just was driving me crazy. So my ex-wife, my wife at the time, said, why don't you look into the county system and see if there's something there? And this job popped up with Pinellas County Schools. And I had thought, like everyone else, like most people, retired people just go to Florida. There's just no kids go down there. Wrong. There's a lot of kids down here. And my county, Pinellas County, is very dense. And when I joined the school system, and it has at least as many students, 100,000 students, 140 schools. We are like the 23rd school in the nation, Pinellas County Schools in the nation, of just the amount of students that we have. So it was an eye-opener. And I joined, and they kind of just let me have it. It was a new position. It was emergency coordinator, emergency manager with the school system. So I didn't have autonomy, but they allowed me to create this position. And back then, now we're talking probably 2013, even before then, 2014. It really wasn't a position that the legislature was too worried about, because we'd had a few school shootings. So they kind of let you just kind of decide by county how you wanted to handle this through your school board and superintendent. So I went in and said, okay, here's what I want to do. And I had a group of people that worked with me that dealt with all the maintenance and dealt with creating this preventative atmosphere of fencing, of door locks, of cameras, communication devices, just preventative measures. And it worked out pretty well. And I was making progress. And then Sandy Hook happened. And then, of course, the red flags went up. And everyone was like, no, we need to do more. Okay. So we tried to do more. And then Parkland happened. And when Parkland happened at Marjorie Stone & Douglas High School, which was a pretty big high school, that's when the legislature decided to step in and say, okay, no more civilians in these positions. We need the police protecting our schools. And even though I was former law enforcement, I completely disagreed with that, because police are reactive. They're not proactive. They just don't have the time for that. So I left, and I just became a consultant. And after Uvalde in Texas, which was just a complete disaster, and I know the media focused on the law enforcement end of it and how that delay, kill these kids. There are a lot of issues in that school beforehand with a door lock that was broken, with a security guard that had disappeared, with a teacher that stood outside and smoking a cigarette. Anyway, after that, I was just so upset. My current wife said, you got to vent. You got to write a book. So I wrote a book. It's called The First 5 Minutes. And the reason I called it that is because the FBI had these statistics. Now, it takes a long time for this data to gather up. So it's not like it is the most recent. These are statistics back in 2014, 2015, where the FBI, after looking at the data, said the majority, I'm not going to say everyone, but the majority of your school shooting incidents happen within 3 to 5 minutes. Meaning, normally after 5 minutes, they're gone. They're dead. They either shoot themselves, the cops are there, they take care of it, whatever, they give themselves up. So that's why I called it The First 5 Minutes. And it's a guidebook. And I wanted a guidebook, not a diatribe of 200 or 300 pages, this boring edge-of-speak book that's just put on a shelf and collects dust. I wanted a guidebook. It's only 77 pages long. Take you an hour and a half to read it. I wanted something that was quick, practical, concise, easy to read, and put the message out there. You don't have to spend a lot of money. It's just a human factor. If you get enough training and drill correctly, you're gonna at least be prepared if something does happen. And within there, I do have what consider preventive measures. The preventative measures are basically layers. You want to layer the school and delay that shooter from getting into the classrooms, which means in simpler terms, high fences. You want 6-foot fences at least. You want one entrance to that school during school time. Every other door should be locked. One entrance. In that one entrance, now you're going to let everybody in, because I've had arguments saying, oh, no, we should have cameras. We can't let everybody in. Look, you're going to let everybody in. I don't know, he's standing out there in camos with an AK-47? You're going to let everybody in. But your lobby area has to be secure. Once they get into that lobby area, you have a high countertop. You bring that tempered glass down where you just have a little slot on the bottom. They give their access. If they are access allowed in, you buzz them in or you escort them in. Either way, the only way they can get in is if they have access. So those doors are locked from the lobby area. If they don't have access, they go back out the same way they came in. So those layers of security. And it took me, again, a long time, up until almost 4 years that I was working for the county school system, that those classroom doors need to be locked during school time. And I got pushed back on that because the teachers are saying, oh, these kids want to go to the bathroom. They need a pass to go here. They want to go there. Oh, it's a pain in the neck because I got to go up and unlock the door and bring them in. Too bad. If you have that door locked already during class time, if there is an incident, you've got one less thing you got to do. Because during the lockdown, the door is already locked. You turn the lights off, you close the blinds, you sit on the floor away from the windows, silence your phone, and you wait for the good guys to come. That's it. That's all you got to do. It's not rocket science. You don't have to turn it. I'm not expecting these teachers to turn into some paramilitary soldier and have a switch go off where they go into some, Rambo effect. Teachers didn't sign up.
Yeah, because there's a certain point where it becomes a mental struggle with these kids because you're filling them with paranoia and then you're militarizing the school and things of that nature. So how do you find that fine line to where you have that peace of mind for the kids and the teachers? And
you got to drill more often. Now, I get the argument that, yes, there is not a consensus. There is an argument that if you drill too much and you overdo it, it just becomes like a fire drill. It's just, oh, we got to do a fire drill again. Let's go outside, wait for the bell to come back, and let's get this thing over with. And sometimes that's what happens with lockdown drills. Lockdown drills, especially for high schools. I'm not talking elementary or middle schools. High schools are huge now. I mean, they're like college campuses. Minimum, it's going to take you an hour, at least an hour to run a proper lockdown drill of a high school. And you get pushback. I understand, because educators, especially for a school we grade schools in Florida. I don't know if you do that where you are, but they're graded A through F. Mm-hmm. So if you're at a D and an F school, you think that teacher's going to worry about some drill they got to run? They're worried about not only themselves, the grade that they're going to get on themselves when they're observed, but on teaching these kids in order to bring the entire grade up for the school. So when you go to them and say, we need to run a lockdown drill, you just get an eye roll. Because, oh no, we got to do this again. Because it takes too much time away from teaching. Now that, look, I got papers to grade, I got a test I got to give, I got this, that. I mean, it's just the pressure is amazing. So they're not only getting pressure from the superintendent on top of the principals have got pressure on top of the teachers. And here you are telling them, you got to run these drills or these kids aren't going to be safe. So it's this dynamic and this pushback that you get because you got to teach these kids. And now after the pandemic and after the BLM movement and after the defund police movement, you've already got these kids in the hole. I mean, they just came out with these test grades. I mean, we're dropping every year. Math and science have dropped dramatically. In just the times of the pandemic, these kids are learning. I mean, you got kids in the 8th grade and some of them can't read. I mean, are you kidding me? And now you're going to tell them you got to take an hour every quarter to do these drills. So look, I understand that. But once you have these drills in place and you run the same one every time, eventually I wanted to become just mental memory, just implicit memory wrote that, okay, I know what to do. The problem we run into, Jonah, is that I don't like announced drills.
No.
And I'll tell you why. Because when you announce the drill, what's going to happen? Everyone, it's human nature. What are you going to do if you're a teacher? You know what I'm going to do? I am going to pre-plan for this drill. I'm going to already have the lights turned off. I'm going to already have the blinds closed. I want to get this thing over as much as possible. Let's get through it. That's what you run into, which is completely wrong. I love unannounced drills.
Yeah.
You go in.
I wanted to add something in there because we share that we both worked within, some form of the government. I was in the Navy and we had talked about this, and sometimes we would get those unannounced drills. And so I think that should be implemented. That should be something that we need to implement is unannounced drills. And especially in the Midwest, and I'm sure the same thing for you, especially with the hurricanes that come around and things of that nature. When we get our bad storms, our tornadoes and things, we shouldn't have that complacency of these teachers wanting to pre-plan for them. It should just be, boom, there's the stress. What are you going to do now? Right. Because if we put that complacency in place, when it actually happens, they're not going to take it serious. No. And a perfect example is Parkland. When Parkland happened, they had run a drill a month prior. Okay. The issue with what happened at Parkland is the fire alarm went off, whether by accident or crews pulled it. At that point, they didn't know what to do because they did not train for that fire alarm going off during a lockdown drill. So when they interviewed these two teachers afterwards, and the two teachers said, yeah, we heard the shots. We just thought it was another drill. So already you're delaying in that part because not only are you like, that sounds like firecrackers, but wait a minute, are we doing another drill? That was a real thing. And now you get the fire alarm go off. So now you're like, now what the hell do we do? So there was incredible chaos and confusion because a fire alarm goes off. You are told you got to leave. You got to get out. So half of them are leaving. The other half are running the other way. Some of them are going towards the gunfire because what happened was they're like, well, let's run. And they thought they were running away from the gunfire. What they were hearing was an echo. So they were running towards the gunfire. So it was complete confusion. So that is a perfect example of training and drilling properly to what you need to do. Now, I struggle with this for high schools. High schools today, a lot different than, I'm old school. High schools today, these kids are adults. I mean, they can think for themselves, they're going to do what they need to keep themselves safe. So in that situation, if they're going to run, okay, I'm not going to prevent some kid who feels safer by running. Okay, you should listen to your teacher. But in fact, my son is in high school, and I asked him today, I said, what are you doing at your schools? I don't have the power to do that, but they still use options-based training, meaning the teacher will decide on whether they're going to run or whether they're going to stay in the classroom. And I said, Luke, why are you leaving a perfectly safe classroom? Why would you do that? He says, well, I want to risk my life. I'm going to go out in the hallway. I said, oh, really? You think the chances are better if you go out in the hallway
not knowing where the shooter is, thinking that shots are coming from somewhere else when you're perfectly safe in a locked classroom. And the reason I say that is there's only been one incident. It was on a Native American reservation many years ago, and I think that was a targeted attack where the shooter shot out a lock. Since then, shooters don't have the time to shoot out a locked door. They're looking for easy access. They're looking for unlocked doors. Look at the video in Nashville. Perfect example. That shooter came in and saw locked doors and just moved on. Locked, moved to the next one. Locked, moved to the next one. Then they found an open door. Great, I'll go in there and look for easy victims. It takes too long. If it's 3 to 5 minutes, it takes too long to stand there and shoot out a locked door. They'll just go to the next one. They're looking for easy victims. They want numbers. So this idea that somehow this options-based training, which is called run, hide, fight, is better for students, it makes no sense to me. And especially for middle and elementary school students, that shouldn't even be in the discussion. High school, okay, you can discuss it, but I still disagree with it. But middle and elementary school, I mean, I've asked, these people, look, you agree, you want to run this options-based training, this run, hide, fight. Do you agree with this with elementary school children? Oh, no, we modify it. All right, how do you modify it? Do you run? Well, no, we have the kids, sit on the floor. Okay, so you're sheltering in place, right? Right. That's the hide part. What about the fight part? Are you going to have some 6-year-old there trying to fight off a shooter? Well, no, we don't have that part. Well, then you're in lockdown. You're not doing run, hide, fight. You shouldn't be doing it. Why? You're going to have some little 6-year-old kid, bring in a soup can and throw it at a shooter when he comes through the door? Are you out of your mind? I've had an FBI agent, a former FBI agent, write this book. And she did an interview on CNN and she said, oh, yeah, well, the teachers will fight the shooter when they come in. Really? Well, the majority of the teachers, they're women. So I'm going to have some 5'7", 100-pound teacher going to fight off some bulky guy coming in there shooting up a classroom? It's just this craziness. And I even have law enforcement people agreeing that run, hide, fight somehow works in schools. As you know, Jonah, it was created by the Department of Homeland Security many years ago. And there's a video out there created by the Houston Police Department. It's like a 20-year-old video. It was made for businesses in corporate America. It's a great video. You see the guy come in with a shotgun, he's shooting up the place, and they tell you, there's a narrator comes across, if you can run to a designated place. You can't, you'll hide. If you have to fight. Okay, you're all adults. You're in this business atmosphere. You can get together and fight the shit. Fine, great. Now somehow it got transferred over to schools. I have no idea how this happened or who thought this was a good idea. For teachers, you have one adult, the rest are kids. Elementary schools, you got 25 or 30 kids. You're going to gather up 25 or 30 kids and say, come on, kids, we're going to run out of the classroom and down this hallway to the exit. What do you think they're going to see and hear? They're going to hear all kinds of screaming and the noises they don't never forget. They're going to probably see bodies, blood, dead people. I mean, you're out of your mind. And you don't think they're going to gather at that exit door and pile up there? Oh, my God. It just, it makes no sense.
That's like herding cattle into just a stall and taking them out.
Yeah, because what are they going to do? Jonah, they're going to panic like everyone else. They will panic.
Well, and I definitely don't want my 2 7-year-old daughters going out into a hallway with a gun pointed at them, saying, go fight them. And I sure as hell don't want my wife coming out of the library and doing the same damn thing.
Nope.
I mean, I don't think there is a man out there that would say they want their wife to go out there. I don't think there's a wife of a male teacher that would say, I want you to go out there. That teacher is more valuable in that locked room with those kids, at least to have the coherent mind to calm those kids down.
Exactly.
Instead of walking out that door and put themselves at risk.
Right. I agree completely. I tell teachers, look, if it comes to it, if you've got a shooter that is at your door, that's when you can barricade the door. Take your file cabinet, knock it over, push the desk up against the door, anything to barricade that door. But it hasn't happened. It won't. But if it does, do that to block that door, at least something to barricade it. But the shooter, they just won't spend the time on that. It's not going to happen. It may happen one day. But I still think if something like that happens to be a targeted shooting, meaning that shooter is going specifically to that classroom with the intention of killing a certain teacher, a certain person, not randomly just go there and shoot out a lock. It doesn't make any sense. So this idea is just, I get pushback on it, but I will still argue that lockdowns work. The National Psychologists Association, the National Association for Special Resource Officers, both of them agree that lockdowns are your first and only option without, doing this run, hide, fight crap or whatever acronyms. They have acronyms for everything. ALICE, alert, whatever other acronym you want to bring up there. Doesn't work. Just stay in the classroom. Help is on the way. I mean, look at Nashville again. I point to Nashville, but it was a perfect situation because as soon as that shooter got in there, literally the police were there within 3 minutes and took that person down. I mean, they did a heck of a job. I'm sorry that the principal decided to come out and challenge the shooter, which happened in Sandy Hook also. And principals, I get it. They're a different mindset. But unless you're carrying a gun, you don't challenge somebody with a gun. You just don't do it. But I've got pushback on that. Look, I've done over 100 drills at these schools, everything from elementary, middle, and high school. Elementary is the toughest because you got small children who, not that they're naive, but you just feel differently when you're dealing with small children. Mm-hmm. And the principals at the elementary schools, before I got there on the job, would say to me, okay, we're going to run a drill. That's fine. We'll run a drill. And I said, what do you do during your drill? Well, I take myself and my staff, and we go around the campus to make sure all the doors are locked. Okay, what are you going to do in a real situation? And she said the same thing. I'm going to take me and my staff, make sure the doors are locked. I said, well, then you're not coming home that night. What makes you think, well, they're my kids. I got to go make sure they're safe. I said, no, you're going to make sure you're going to die. You have to stay in your room, lock the door until the good guys get here. And literally, Jonah, these principals are just in tears. I got to save my kids. They're my kids. Right. My first priority in the book, and every time I get on these podcasts, number one, you keep yourself safe. That's the number one thing you do. You keep yourself safe, then you can save lives. Number two, armed SROs. Armed school resource officers are one of the best examples we have in the entire country that are going to be an advocate for children, staff, and parents. They're not the enemy. Now, because of this defund the police movement, you got these kids saying, oh, no, he's got a uniform on. No, I don't want anything to do. I feel objectified. I feel horrible. I feel distressed because you've got an armed officer here. No, school resource officers do not have police powers. They're not going to arrest you. They're here for your safety. Period. And you know what happens, Jonah? Parents will come up and say, I want these school resource officers back in the school. It's slowly coming back where these resource officers are brought back. However, of course, there's budget issues, behind this. But those are the two important things. You keep yourself safe. Then you can help someone else. Look, it's the same thing. You're in an airplane. You need oxygen, and oxygen masks come down. What do they tell you? You put your oxygen mask on first. Then you help the child or someone who can't get that oxygen mask on. Keep yourself safe first and foremost. Then you can save other people.
Yeah, because in that split second, you becoming the casualty could mean, it could mean there's 5 more casualties behind you.
Yep.
I mean, you're putting yourself in a dangerous situation. And so preparing these schools, when you took on that job, how much research did you do into everything before you really got started with the plan?
I wanted to make sure, Jonah, because again, being thrown into this, even though my experience from the Secret Service was about protection. And I knew the second thing in the Secret Service was drilling and training. Even though, when I went through training in the Secret Service, it was a pain in the butt. Oh, geez, got to wake up early. I got to go to the location here. They're going to tell us how to shoot again. It was just, you just wanted to get through it. However, we were the only agency, still are the only agency as far as I know, that we have to qualify with our service weapon every month. Once a month, we have to qualify with that service weapon. And don't you think you got muscle memory, implicit memory after that? I mean, it's just automatic that, what you're at the target. So I brought that in. And the second thing I want to do is not sit at a desk. So we had about 140 schools, and I wanted to visit every one of those schools and talk to every one of those principals in those schools, from elementary, middle, all the way up. It took me over a year, but I did it. And I wanted to visit every one of those schools because I tell you, probably the same thing where you are. Every school was different. Some had open courts where in order to go from one class to the other, you had to go outside. Some were completely enclosed. Some had 2 or 3 floors. I mean, the architecture and how these schools were built was different from every school. So there was different situations. Plus, we had 2 schools that dealt with disabled kids and kids with mental health issues. So I had to figure out, okay, what are we going to do with them? And then we had an additional 2 schools that had, let's call it, behavioral issues, meaning the kids that had real aggressive behavioral problems, and lack of a better term, they should have been in jail, but we still had to teach them. So it was all these different scenarios that I had to deal with, and I made sure I visited everyone, and I would just go to those principals and ask them, how are you running your drills? How do you want to do this? Because this is how I want you to run them. Tell me if this is something that can be done. So the number one thing was codes, because even when I came in, Jonah, they were still using codes. Code red, blue, yellow, whatever the heck they were using for these codes. And I said, what does that mean? Code red sounds serious, but I don't know what that means. What if you got parents visiting? What if you got maintenance workers there? What if you got somebody that doesn't go to the school? They're like, okay, this sounds bad. What do I do? I said, speak in clear language. If you're in a lockdown, say it. We're in a lockdown. We're in a lockout. We have a bomb threat, whatever. Clear language, put it out there. That took forever because they didn't want to get off this code thing. I don't know why, but there are still schools, believe it, out there that still use a code system, Jonah. It drives me crazy. The next thing was, like I said, these principals would wander around the school and make sure every door was locked. I said, it's just redundant. I said, because at the end of the drill, any drill, you take the keys with you and your staff, you designated their areas, and you go and unlock the doors. As you're going to unlock the door, that's when you can check if the door is locked. Yep, it's locked. Okay, we know it's not broken. Now you can open it up and say the drill's over. So I said, whatever you're doing is redundant, and it's going to get somebody killed. So no, you don't have to go out and check the doors that are locked. Trust your teachers that it's going to work. So again, and then we came down to announced and unannounced. So I kept pushing for unannounced. Finally, because the parents would also push back. Because what happened, a kid would go home and the parents said, how to go to, we ran a drill. You what? School never told me about it. I don't want you in part of those drills. And that's what's happening recently. The pendulum's kind of swung the other way where parents are like, well, I don't want my child getting the stress and anxiety of going through a lockdown drill. Oh my gosh, tell me in advance because I can keep them at home. I'm like, what?
How you going to go in advance if something happens?
Right. If something happens. Anyways, but I said, okay, let's do this. Let's at least tell parents or put out the word that during the week, we're going to run a lockdown drill. And just try to make sure the rumor mill doesn't start like the whispers to start, hey, we're running it tomorrow at 2:00. Tell everybody. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. I had certain principals that agreed wholeheartedly that they wanted unannounced drills because they wanted to see how their people react. I'll tell you a story because I got plenty of them. There was a school in North County of me in Pasco County. One of the guys I worked with, his wife was an assistant principal at a middle school. She was very up on all the emergency procedures. She would run the drills with her staff, and she was well prepared. Outside of the school, I was like across the street. This kid, I say kid, he's probably in his 20s, had an argument with his mom's boyfriend. He didn't like the mom's boyfriend. So he got himself a weapon, and he started to shoot up the house and shoot up the neighborhood. Well, one of the bullets strayed over to where the school was. Of course, the school did the right thing of going to a lockdown. Everything was fine. I mean, they caught him and nobody got hurt. However, when the school went into a lockdown, they do what's considered an after action, meeting. The assistant principal found out 1/3 of her staff froze. They didn't do anything. Nothing. So that's a real event. Now, no matter how many times you drill, Jonah, you and I, if something chaotic, if something happens in our lives, we think we know what we're going to do. You have no idea what you're going to do. You don't. No one has any idea how they're going to react in an emergency until it happens. You just don't. I mean, everybody's different. But 1/3, that's a problem. So that's why I emphasize, look, I know these drills are a pain in the butt and they take a long time, but to just get the confidence to know what to do, that's all. Reason I wrote the book, short, you can flip to a page and know what to do. In the book, I have these credit card size cards that you can laminate. You can download it, get them laminated, and they have little instructions on them, just very simple lockdown, lockout instructions, what you need to do. Because I tell you, I talked to a doctor friend of mine, and she said, oh, yeah. She said, we got those cards for emergency room personnel. She goes, because sometimes they'll have a code, they'll say code purple. And like, I don't know what a code purple is. So they go look on their card like, oh, yeah, code purple is this. So I created these cards because most of your teachers have lanyards with their ID in them or their copier thing where they can use a copy machine. And if they forget something, you quickly look at the card and, oh, geez, I forgot to shut the blinds, or I forgot to silence my phone. Because you're going to forget your name. You're going to forget what day it is. You are going to panic. And as long as you just follow procedure and your mind just kicks in, again, I don't want you to be Rambo, but I just want you to have the confidence. When you hear that announcement, we're in a lockdown, automatically, lights off, doors already locked, close the blinds, sit on the floor, be quiet, good guys are coming. Simple. That's it.
So do you feel that these teachers should kind of take it upon themselves after hours to kind of practice this kind of thing and make sure that they're up to date? Because, while I was in, the reason they made us train the same thing over and over and over and over and over again is just because if we ran into that situation, there was somewhat of okay, I somewhat know what to do. And so they can start rolling through that process and it kind of comes back to them. Because, like you said, muscle memory, when you shoot and you shoot and you shoot, and it's just like me. I was a weapons specialist in the Navy and, I was around guns, and that's what I would do down in the armory. We would just sit there and practice dry shooting at targets. And so when we actually got out there, we knew it, you had that muscle memory of pulling that gun and pointing it straight out.
Right.
So there's got to be some kind of, some kind of initiative to make sure that these, and it could go all the way across the board, all the way to, like we were saying earlier, tornadoes and, the storms that you guys get down there in Florida and things of that nature, that these teachers should have that right mentality to be able to at least know the first few steps to get them started in the right direction.
I agree with you, but there's two issues with that. One, I've got questions from teachers that say, look, we are legislated. We are told by our school board, this is how the drills will be run. Now, could they take initiative and in their own sense go, okay, I know we're going to run a drill once a year or once every 6 months, but I'm just going to read up on this in case something happens. But again, the school system may say, no, you will run. We're doing run, hide, fight. We're not going to stay in the classrooms. And the teachers, there's nothing I could do. I'm being told to do this. The second thing is it's just human nature. I've had teachers that are very aggressive, former military, former law enforcement that want to carry a weapon in the classroom. I've had some teachers on the other side that could care less. Never happen here. It's never going to happen here. I don't care. I've had teachers during a drill sitting in their classroom, feet up on their desk, eating a sandwich during a drill. And when I've asked them about it, they'll say, I got no kids in my classroom. I'm like, what? What the hell does that mean? So it's just this dynamic. It's human nature. You're going to get some, yes, that will agree. They need to know more. A lot of them are forced that they can't do what they want to do. And then some that just don't care. You would think, because to me, teachers are pretty much empaths, that they want to take care of their kids. But again, you still get this attitude even today. It'll never happen here. No, it's not going to happen here. I don't need to drill for this. They think it's a waste of time. And a lot of kids think it's a waste of time. You get up to high school, you can think it's a complete waste of time. Middle school is even worse than high school, I think, because high school, Some of them as adults will, okay, this is pretty serious because they know what happened at Parkland. They know what happened at so many shootings. Middle school is absolutely the worst. These kids are just getting their hormones and they can't stay quiet. It's just, it's kind of laughable, but I've had SROs just go into these classrooms and read these kids' riot act saying, do you think I want to go home and knock on your parents' door and tell them because you couldn't keep your mouth shut, you got shot today? It's difficult. It is really frustrating and difficult. If I was a teacher, I tell you what, I don't know. It's one of the toughest jobs out there because you're trying to catch up. You're trying to keep them safe. You're trying to save your job and do the right thing. And it's very, very difficult. And on top of that, we can switch over a little bit. On top of that, you got social media and social media pressure. I mean, everybody and their uncle, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, whatever the hell is out there, say the wrong thing and they're going to cancel you. Say the wrong thing and they're going to cyberbully a kid. Say the wrong thing and you lose your job. It's just unbelievable. I mean, I had to get off. I'm not even on Facebook anymore. That's why I'm not on Facebook. I mean, it's just the vitriol, it just makes you really angry. And it's horrible because one of the main things I know it'll never happen. I mean, maybe in private schools, but not in public schools. There's absolutely no reason for kids to have cell phones in school. There is no reason. The only reason you would have is a kid who's got a job. He's got to leave for a job or something, needs a phone for his job or whatever. That's it. You got a job? Okay, show me the paper. You got a job, you could have the cell phone. Otherwise, there's absolutely no reason to have a cell phone because what happens in any event, what you're going to get is these kids that are texting their parents. There's a shooter on campus. I'm okay. I love you, blah, blah, blah. But then the rumor mill starts. I've had 5 or 6 incidents easily at high schools where there was a call, there was a gun on campus. Okay, got to go into lockdown. As soon as the police get there, dogs get there, everybody gets there to search for this supposed gun. Come to find out there is no gun. But during the search, now you're getting airdrops to other phones. You're getting text messages going to the police. Oh, I saw a gun in Johnny's classroom. Oh, no, wait, there's a gun over here in Susie's classroom. It just rolls right into it. And the rumors will start and continue and continue and continue. During bomb threats, it's even worse. I had a high school of 1,500 kids. Next door to it was a middle school kid. Bomb threat gets called in. Even though I disagree because there is no package, they go into evacuation. So you evacuate 1,500 kids. Well, middle school's right next door. We got to evacuate them too. Here comes the rumor mill. Now, guess what? As soon as those texts start going out to parents, guess who's coming to the school? All those parents to pick up their kids. I had to get the fire department out there with a hook and ladder to block the freaking road so these parents wouldn't come in and block everything up trying to reach their kid for a bomb threat, not a suspicious package, not something they found, just a threat. And you even got rumors coming out, oh, I saw a package with wires on the 3rd floor. No, it was over at room 100. I saw a kid drop. And this goes on and on and on. And you talk about frustration. It's just asinine. There is no reason for these kids to have cell phones in school. It'll never happen. I hope it does. I know in private schools, I would assume you've got a smaller clientele. But public schools started this, and you're not going to go backwards, I guess.
I remember we had a dog at the school. Actually, both, because I went to 2 different high schools. I went to a high school till I was like a sophomore, and then my senior year or junior, and then my senior year, it was my senior year. I went to a different school. But both schools, we had a dog that walked with the resource officer, and he walked those halls. You could watch him twice during the class. You'd see that him and that dog walk by. So is that not something that still happens?
Depends. In our school system in Pinellas County, we've got 3. I think we've got 3 dogs, and it's random. It's not something that's dedicated unless they've got some kind of suspicion that's happened. But it's random that they'll run. With too many schools, 140 schools. There's no way they can, have the dog there permanently sitting out there. If they've got a complaint or something like that, or a principal asks, hey, I got suspicion of this. Yeah, they'll run the dog through. But no, not to have them there permanently. We just don't have the resources for that. I mean, look, Jonah, we're trying to get school resource officers in every one of these schools and budgetary effects on that too. And while we're on that subject, let me talk about technology, because that also comes up. Usually what happens is after an event, after Parkland, Uvalde, Nashville, whatever these events are, that's when parents get up to the school board and say, you have to do something. You have to do something to these principals and superintendents and school boards. What do? They're going to bring in metal detectors. It's a knee-jerk reaction, okay? So they say, all right, we got a grant. Doesn't even cost us any money. We're going to bring in these metal detectors, and your kids are going to have to come through, and everybody's going to be safe. Phew, done. Everybody's safe. We're good to go. Parents are happy. Everybody's happy. It's what they call security theater. Because, Jonah, think about it. Common sense. If I'm a shooter who's crazy enough that's going to shoot up a school, why would a metal detector stop me? How would that stop me? I'm just going to go in and shoot everybody up anyways. I don't give a crap. So the other thing is, let's say you put metal detectors up. Okay, there they are. All right, you got the metal detectors. All right, if I want to get a gun into that school, how do you think I would do it? Don't you think that I got a buddy inside, open up the side door, put in my backpack, there you go, it's got a gun in it. How about an after-school event? How about on weekends? You can get a gun in that school easily. Drop it through a window, drop it through a side door, no problem. So this idea that metal detectors are the answer, they're not. Because now you got to train the staff. Take time to do that. Is that under contract? I don't think so. Now you got to worry about maintenance for the metal detectors themselves. What if something happens? What if you got all kind of false readings? This thing's going off. Now these kids are taking forever. Taking an hour for these kids to get into school, start the day. So you got to start the day earlier. It's what they call security theater. It makes no sense. Some security. I agree with cameras. But again, cameras are not the be-all of end-all. Great. It's good to have cameras in the front. It's nice to have cameras in areas of a school. But guess what? You don't think these kids know where these cameras are? You don't think they know where all the hiding places are, under the stairs, in the corner, away from those cameras? And no, again, it makes no sense. Don't spend all this money and training on technology. There's plenty of companies out there. They're going to tell you they've got an app. All you need to do is push a button and it locks all the doors. It calls a police department. It's doing all this whiz-bang stuff. Guess what? It doesn't work half the time. It doesn't. I've had companies come up to me because that's what happens. I don't want to call them ambulance chasers, but usually after something happens, they'll give you a call. Hey, I got this technology. All you got to do is push a button. Everybody can get an app. Well, what if the Wi-Fi goes down? What if it can't work off of 5G or LTE or whatever the hell? What if the tower goes down? They cut the power. There's all kinds of things that can happen with security if you're not depending on the humans. So safety and security today still depends on human factors. It has to be human factors. Somebody in that school has to push a button. Someone in that school has to call 911. Pushing a button is not going to keep you safe. It's not. You may think that, okay, you see on the media, there's a school out in wherever, and they paid, $50,000 to get this system. Well, that's one school. One. I got 140 schools here with 100,000 kids. You think you're going to be able to afford that technology? It doesn't make any sense. It's not now, not in this world. 20, 30 years from now, after, I'm gone, maybe, but, maybe we'll have robots out there. But even that, because there was something I saw on LinkedIn the other day. There was a little mini robot and he runs back and forth in the school. And I thought it was a neat idea because number one, he's never going to get tired and need a break or have a lunch break or anything like that. And they showed me it was workable where, he would see a door open or this and that, but it's just a piece. It's just a small piece in the puzzle. It's not the be all end all, like this will make us safer. What's going to make you safer is running the correct drills and layering and preventing that shooter from, getting in there until the cops get there. That's still the way it is. It's technology just not there yet. Not yet. Yeah. And now there are apps out there. I'm sorry. Let me just make one more point. There are apps out there. One of them that my son has here, it's called Safe. I think it's called Safer Schools. And it's an app you put on your phone. That app basically alerts you if there's something that happens at the school. That's it. It's not technically a security app. It's basically just an app that parents can download that if something happens at the school, I don't care, bomb threat, fire, gun on campus, whatever, it will alert you on your phone. So it's basically just like a text if they send out a blanket text. But yeah, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about apps that tell you that a push of a button is going to make you safe. No, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, and you were talking about the money standpoint just for that system, and it's probably a lot more than $50,000. But I work in the fire protection side of things, and just a fire alarm system is about that much for a small one. And so I could only imagine the sophistication and the technology that would have to go and be installed in that, man. The retrofit itself would be outrageous.
It is. Yeah. And we had a pilot program here right before I left. They did 5 schools. They came in and said, okay, we'll do this for these 5 schools. And they were going to do it for free, obviously, because they want to get into the system. And it worked okay. I mean, it was nice to have cameras that could zoom in. It was nice to have cameras where you could move the camera, with a little lever, all this whiz bang stuff, which is fine. But then, you're thinking, okay, that's 5 of 140. We're talking tens of millions of dollars, and you just don't have the budget for that kind of thing. It's not possible.
Right. And, we had talked a little bit about the different situation and the tips and tricks that you would use. Putting yourself into the teacher's situation, what would you tell them to try to keep your mindset during a situation like this?
Well, when I meet with teachers, it's different scenarios. Most of them, if I meet after an incident, they're very scared. A lot of them will say, look, I don't want to come to school anymore. My husband said, I don't want to come in, or my boyfriend or whatever. I'm fearful. What do I do? And I just tell them, look, as long as you have a classroom where you can lock the door, as long as you have an area where you can, stay down and be safe, I said, just have that in your mind. I said, I understand I'm not here to train you for an hour, 2 hours, whatever it is, and all of a sudden you're going to be this warrior. I said, but if something does happen and you're already that kind of personality as an empath, you're going to protect these kids. I mean, that's what you're going to do. And that, I know all of you, that will all kick in, that you want to protect these kids. So just be mindful, and just when you drill, just take it seriously. Just take the drill seriously, because it's only going to help you in the end. And I know you're under pressure from a lot of things on your atmosphere, and yes, it's like being struck by lightning. More than likely, it's not going to happen here. It's not going to happen. It may never happen. However, just be prepared, and not just here in school. Look, it's happened in malls and movie theaters and stuff. Just they call it, you and I, call it situational awareness. And, I even forget sometimes, you're relaxing, you're having a good time, whatever, had a few drinks in you, but just having in the back of your mind, if something does happen, okay, I know what to do. It's just something that, again, you're already in that mindset that you're there to protect those kids if something does happen. So it's not that hard to get to the next level. Just become a warrior, to just flip the switch and go, okay, now I'm in protection mode, and we just got to sit and wait because the good guys are coming. So I try to build them with some kind of confidence that they can do this, and to watch out, because even principals are pushing this. Watch out for any of these new, I say new acronyms of they're going to train you, with these different acronyms of what to do, and just stay with the lockdowns and keep yourself safe in the classroom.
Yeah. And, we try to keep, I know teachers try to keep the traffic in the halls walk class to a minimum, but during your research, have you seen that most of these shooters have done it when these kids are in between classes or going to lunch or things of that nature?
The one thing that we know is true. Well, two things we know are true. One is the majority of these shooters are either former students or current students. The other thing is they're watching. They're watching. They know how the drills are run. They know when the bell rings at a certain time. They know your most vulnerable times are arrival, lunch, and dismissal. They already know all these things. They know which gates are going to be open. They know which doors are going to be open on the side because so-and-so went to get a pizza, or so-and-so goes out for a smoke, or so-and-so wedges the door. So they know all these things. So that's why I advise not only that SROs are a good thing, but I advise, especially, I want to say middle and high school students. Look, you've got what's called student advisory councils. Years ago when I was a kid, you used to have these councils filled with guys who wanted to get into the military or law enforcement, and they would go around the school. Most of the time, they went around the school to see who was smoking because you couldn't smoke back then. You know what I mean? You're not supposed to now, but back then, smoking was the big thing. Nowadays, get these student advisory councils, and you're not going to be a rat because you're not ratting anybody out. Go around that school and make sure the doors are closed. Make sure they're not wedging a rock in there or a wedge against the door. Close the door. That's it. That's all you got to do. You're not ratting on anybody because I don't want whoever's observing the school. And there are people watching the school. And they don't do this ad hoc. They don't do this like out of the blue. They're planning. Little one down in Nashville. That was planned for months. They're planning way ahead of time of what they're going to do. And they're watching that school. So they're watching what you're doing. So it's always just be aware of your school surroundings. I tell kids, look, there's ownership. You're cheering on your team. You're cheering on this. You're on the basketball team, football team, whatever. Well, have ownership in your school. You want to keep everybody safe. Get on the student council and just get some volunteers. Walk around the school. I don't care. Walk around with the SROs. Go around in their golf carts, whatever, and learn something. It's your school. You want to keep it safe. So that I advise that would be the top thing I would advise. Get the students involved because a lot of times these students just feel that they don't have a say. They don't have a say. And if they do, it turns into a protest. I don't want these officers here. I don't want to look at that uniform. Instead of the other side saying, no, I want to keep the school safe. Yeah, I'll volunteer. Why not?
Yeah, and that should be number one is your own safety. Getting complacent, talking about that. We've already been down that road. Just getting complacent in your everyday life and not thinking about it. But people like us, we have that in the back of our mind where we know what that sound is when we hear that gunpowder get blown up in that gun and it goes off and we know, and it perks us up to where it kind of kicks in and we have that training. And that's why I kind of stressed asking you about having these teachers going that extra mile and making sure that they're situationally ready.
Again, if you've got teachers that are motivated, I would ask them, number one, go to a gun range, just hear what it sounds like, even with headphones on or whatever, but just to hear what it sounds like. Secondly, take some kind of EMS course because now they've been pushing for teachers to have bleed kits. The students are bleeding out. They at least got some kind of first aid kit there to stop the bleeding. If you're motivated for that, I'm not going to force that on teachers. I mean, it's something that, again, if you're interested and motivated, go see what a gunshot sounds like. So you don't think it's just firecrackers. Learn, CPR and EMS and, stopping the blood bleed. So, but again, Jonah, teachers under a tremendous amount of pressure. I mean, they take their work home most of the time anyways. So it's very tough to sell that, because that's all I concentrate on. And I understand it's a niche, but if the kids aren't safe, they're not going to learn. So,
well, I mean, as a parent, and I would hope that I'm speaking for every parent out there, that their child's safety is, utmost importance in every aspect. And so with that being said, how would you advise the communities of these schools to go about pushing for a better safety program of this?
You got to ask. Number one would be ask your kids, what are they doing? How are they running their safety program? Are you doing drills? What kind of drills are you running? Are you staying in the classroom, or are they having you run outside? What are they doing? And once you find out, if you disagree with it, especially if it's run, hide, fight, go to the school board. I know you only get 3 minutes at the lectern to speak your piece, but find out and emphasize and ask why. Why are you running run, hide, fight when you've got a locked classroom and they're perfectly safe in the classroom? And bring up the statistics. Bring up that the SRO Association, Psychologist Association said lockdowns work, not run, hide, fight. And I think even the Department of Education, their latest one was 2022. The one before that talked about run, hide, fight, but their latest one that I saw, it's called schoolsafety.gov. On there had just a little blurb about lockdowns and shelter in place. It really didn't mention the run, hide, fight as much. They didn't emphasize it as much. But ask the question. Ask your kids what's going on. And again, if you go to a PTA meeting, if the principal's there, how are we running the safety drills? You're curious how you're running them. And they'll tell you. I mean, if they don't, somebody should be telling you. And then start parents now, as you know, there's a movement and they've got a little more power, and they will go to school board meetings and they will complain. I know most of it's about teaching and what's being taught, but you still have to ask about safety and how they're running these things. Because, Jonah, this is not going to end. This is not something where, okay, we're going to do this, we're done. No more school shootings. It's only going to get worse. It's going to continue to happen. And God forbid, because I don't talk about gun control at all because it's so divisive, and I don't care if it's a whatever you got, because I could bring up just as many statistics over in Asian countries where they use knives, or Brazil where they use knives and Molotov cocktails to kill people. And, we just don't hear it in the media. I mean, we just had one, was it a couple months ago? Was it in Germany where they killed 30 kids? So it's not going to end, and has nothing to do with guns. I mean, God forbid they start thinking about bombs, Molotov cocktails. I mean, something like that,
or cars.
Something else they'll bring up. So
a car running through a crowd of these kids.
Right? No, they'll use anything as a weapon. You're crazy enough. So this is something that is, again, no one can say out there, okay, here's my plan. This should end all school shootings. It's not. It's multi-layered. I understand there's mental health issues, threat assessment that you want at your schools. Trying to figure out, if this kid is a threat to your school or not, or, what he's doing. I mean, there's all these different levels to go through. My whole thing is just preparing for the worst. All you gotta do is prepare for the worst. And then the preventative measures, again, of a layered measure to stop it. To slow the shooter down. You're not going to stop it. I mean, no one's going to come out there and say, okay, I got a plan to stop it. It's just to prepare that it's going to happen again, and just be prepared for it.
Yeah, I think I've seen something that we have kind of let up on that we shouldn't ever let up on, and that's bullying. I haven't really heard too much, of the anti-bullying movement. And I think that's dwindled down, which should not be. That should be something that's big, that should be advocated as well in school, because that's where it happens most of the time. And
well, you and I know, Jonah, because of social media, it used to be years ago when you were bullied at school. Mm-hmm. Once you got home, you're okay. Now it's completely different. It's 24 hours a day, because once you leave school, they're going to be on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, whatever, and continue cyberbullying you around the clock. Mm-hmm. And that's something that, again, yes, absolutely serious, because don't you think that some of these shooters have been bullied in their lifetime? And
for sure. A while, I mean, look at some of these kids that, that they took, and they said, I was being bullied. And, some of these kids are just targeting one or two people. It's not the whole school. They just
Right.
get to that point where they're just being bullied so much, and that's the only place that they're going to be seen. They're going to see them, and so they
Yep.
do it at the school, and then there's we'll call it collateral damage of other
Right.
lives.
Yep. Yeah.
And,
No, it's just like anything else. You just can't take it anymore. But the thing of it is, again, and I know they put this out there, they say, see something, say something. You do have to have kids that will speak up, say, hey, I noticed Johnny has been depressed lately. Can somebody talk to him? Or, Susie over here has been acting strange, or they changed their dress or their hair color or whatever it is. And a lot of times, and I'm sure you've seen it too, the parents don't see it. The parents just don't see it because the child comes home, runs up to his room. How was your day? Fine. And don't see him again, till maybe the weekend. You got to talk to their friends, their peers, these teachers, what's going on. And that, again, puts more pressure, again, on these teachers to look out for these signs and signals. And what happens is when you do have a student that is acting off, you get into civil rights issues because you don't want to be searching, their computer or their messages or their home or their locker. It's just a real fine line. And, sometimes if you don't cross it, it gets in trouble. I mean, it's just very hard from a law enforcement end and from the education end to catch something like this ahead of time. But sometimes we get lucky. I mean, I'm sure you've seen, there's been SROs that have caught kids because someone told them, hey, this guy brought a gun this or this happened here. And sometimes it does happen. That's why I advocate again for SROs to be in the schools, because they are an advocate.
Yeah, and they deal with these kids. I mean, I remember my resource officer, he was very dedicated to making sure that he knew all of us kids. I mean, he talked to all of us. He would stand there by the buses, greeting us. He would stand out in the parking lots during lunch and talk to us while we're all standing there. He's a great guy, and he knew us pretty much. And I got stories of that guy, but
these people go through intensive training. They're not what you call renegades. They're not given a week's worth of training. Here you go. Here's your gun. Go at it. They are given intensive training dealing with kids. So they know what they're doing. Their patience. They do. I mean, I'm sure every state's like that, but I know here in Florida. I'm sorry?
Their patience is high. That's for sure.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Because I remember there were some kids in my high school, and I'm sure they're worse nowadays, but I remember there were some kids in high school that, boys, any regular officer would have probably flipped his lid over, because they would they would say some nasty shit to, those officers, and they would just get in their face, and they would just stand
But these officers knew them, their names, their background, more than likely knew their family, knew where they lived. Mm-hmm. And because I've been to some of those schools, and I'll tell you one story. Our county is a very dense county. Northern county, rich, elite, mostly white. Southern county, mostly low income, African-American, Puerto Rican, Hispanic, Latino. And so there was that dynamic. And whenever I did a drill up in the North County with the rich white kids, they didn't take it seriously. I mean, they just laughing and joking and grab assing. Anytime I would come and do a drill in a South County schools, you talk about taking it seriously. I mean, it was dead silent. And you find out quickly because the neighborhood these kids are in, there's probably a shooting there, once every couple of days. So they know to get down, get out of the way because, there's a shooting outside our door. But that was the dynamic we had. So it was just a good learning experience. And it was a county where we had all kinds of diversity between all our schools. And the other thing that we had, I was going to talk about the disabled kids because that's something that comes up because not only is it hard because not only are they in wheelchairs, but you get the kids who have either Tourette's or can't control themselves by speaking or yelling or shouting. And when I talked to the principal there, and that was the one thing I noticed in our school system, we had really these great principals who had plenty of experience with this. And I would ask them ahead of time, I said, okay, you understand that they have to be quiet, when we have a drill or during a real situation, because you don't want the shooter to hear that there's a child in there. They're going to try to get in that room. And she goes, no, I understand. And they would have staff, when we ran the drill, they knew what the heck they were doing. They would wheel these kids into the classrooms, lock the doors, they'd have them back. They would play games with them, whatever it took to keep them quiet. And I was shocked because I would just play a ghost. I would just go around the school as if I wasn't even there and listen and, bang on the doors and see if they were locked and stuff. And you didn't hear a peep out of these kids. And I said, look, you don't have to gag them, but I mean, it's okay if they're, if they have to shout out or if they can't control themselves, it's fine. Don't tackle them and stuff. But these kids and these staffers did such a great job. I mean, it was just really amazing. I never really had issues. The only issues I would have at school sometimes were complacency. It wasn't so much that they did something wrong. I even had elementary schools. You talk about, this is what, kindergarten through fifth grade. I had a school, it was 2-level school, it was an open school. And on the second level, you'd go up the stairs, you walk through a set of double glass doors, and then it was like in a circle. They had 5 classrooms in a circle on the second floor. So I would ask the teacher there, I said, is there someone designated that goes out and locks those outer doors? And she says, oh, yeah, I am. And I said, okay, what's plan B if you're a substitute? Well, plan B would be this teacher here who will be designated. I said, okay, and what happens if you get shot or knocked out? And I was saying this in front of these kids, and all these kids go, they all raised, I know where the key is. I know where the key is. And I'm like, okay, where is it? It's outside where the fire extinguisher is. And I brought all these kids out of the classroom, and I had them take that key and lock those outer doors. And you have this sense, with little kids, this sense of pride. And these kids were beaming because I said, you guys are heroes. I said, because if your teacher faints or is injured or can't get to that key, you guys know to run out there and lock that door, and you're going to save everybody on this floor. And these kids were just beaming because they want to do good. They want to keep themselves safe. I mean, it's just amazing. I love dealing with these elementary school kids because they would just do this excellent job. I would go through elementary schools, Jonah, of probably, 800-900 kids. And you would go on that campus and they'd have a lockdown drill and you couldn't hear a peep, nothing. It was exactly as if that was a ghost town, if there was nobody in that school, which is exactly what you want. Because that shooter is going through going, especially someone who's unfamiliar with the school, even if they are familiar with it, they don't hear anything. To them, they're empty classrooms. You don't hear anything. So every time I would go in and they'd unlock the door, and the other thing great about elementary, some of them, not all of them, would have not only the classroom they'd lock in, but they'd have a bathroom where they would lock them in. And I don't mean to laugh, but here's 25 kids, and they're all jammed into this bathroom that fits like 5, and they're all stacked on top of each other. And I said, you know what? You still did a great job because now you doubled up. Now you're in a double lock door. And they would come out and I would just say, you guys all get a gold star. And they would all be smiling like it was the greatest thing that ever happened to them because they were hiding from the bad guy. And that was the nicest thing about the job, to have something like that, to run it so perfectly, and to have these kids just feel empowered to do something like that they kept themselves safe. And hopefully, again, as they've gotten older, I hope it carried over, because I haven't been there now for 4 or 5 years. I've been there for 5 years now.
That's crazy. Yeah, I would say that, as kids progress into teenagers, the motivation to do something good goes away. I say that.
I hope not all of them. I know what you're saying, but hopefully not all of them.
I do see, especially within my daughters, they just want to do something. They want to be a part of it,
Right.
And, it could be a good thing and it could be a bad thing, but, the motivation behind, these kids, that's motivating in myself to say the least, because I watch my little girls and they are competitive, and and I know these kids, as they get older, they lose that spirit and they lose that drive, and they do get complacent with their everyday and their superficial life within social media and all these different things that combine to worsen the situation. It's altogether it's a bad situation that we even have to talk about. But like I said at the beginning, it is something that we do have to talk about. And
yeah, because again, it's not if, it's when. It's going to happen again, and we'll talk about it again. The media will talk about it for a while, and depending on how many are shot, and then they'll bring in the experts or so-called experts to get on there and say whatever and how we can prevent this, and it'll just go round and round again. But again, there's nothing new that's out there. There's nothing new you can point to, or anybody can point to and say, okay, this should work over this, or this new thing should work. There isn't. I don't want to make schools prisons. And that was the one thing that I found out when I wanted to raise the countertops, because a lot of the schools, what happened was, and usually, you don't fix something until something happens. So I had a school, it was a middle school, that a father was going to pick up his son. Well, there was a divorce. The father was not on the list. He was not authorized to pick up his son. When the staff tried to explain that to him, he got irate. He jumped over the counter, attacked the staffer, and was going to go in and get his son. Now, luckily, everything was okay. The police came and everything was settled down. There was no more violence. However, then you start figuring out, wait a minute, these counters are way too low. Anyone could easily jump over the counters, and they didn't have any kind of glass that came down. So we started changing the lobby areas where we had higher countertops and we had glass come down just like you see at a bank, with just a little space on the bottom where you could pass papers back and forth. Well, I understand, because if you didn't see this for a while and then you walked in, it felt immediately claustrophobic. It felt like a bank, because you're like, oh my God, it's so enclosed. And you try to explain to the parents, well, the reason that we did that was because we wanted to keep the staff safe. We didn't want someone jumping over the counter that would hurt them or your child. Mm-hmm. Once you explain that to them, it takes time, but they do finally get used to it. I don't like it, but it has to be done. But again, it's this dynamic of trying to keep the schools open for parents and a welcoming atmosphere versus the safety to keep the bad guy out. So it just, Jonah, maybe 20 years from now, they will be prisons. I don't know. Look what happens over in Israel. They all got armed guards out at every one of their schools. I mean, with AK-47s just standing by. So I don't know if that's going to happen here. They may turn into something closer to prisons where, you just, I don't know.
Or they get rid of the classroom altogether and everything goes to virtual learning.
Yeah, homeschooling. That can happen also. Yeah, I know. It's just there's no easy answer, and I don't know. Public schools they got to change. They have to have student involvement, much more parent involvement, and the administration at these schools has to be open to suggestions of keeping themselves safe and drilling more often. I mean, I just had a thing a couple of days ago where they're complaining on one of the LinkedIn companies on there, saying that the schools don't want to drill as often. They want to drill once a year because it just takes too much time. They don't think it's doing any good, and whatever, they think it costs them money. So they're going to drill once a year. I'm like, that's a waste. That's a complete waste. How are you going to learn anything in that time? And I didn't even get every year. Let's say the summer, you go through the summer. Our schools start in August. So by July, I want to set something up where, can I get in at one of these meetings? They have a 3-day meeting, your teachers, administrators. I said, can I get in for at least an hour? Well, we'll see if we can give you 45 minutes. That's it. A 3-day teacher conference, I get 45 minutes to talk about safety. That's it. You're not going to learn crap in 45 minutes. I'm sorry. It's not going to happen. So it's frustrating, but it's just the way it is. Safety and security, like anything else, Jonah, it's like on the bottom of the top 100 until something happens. Mm-hmm. Then it rises up. And that's what, we're stuck with in this country.
So is there any advocacy groups out there that you kind of put your backing on and maybe endorse?
Me. Yeah. My mentors, there's only two mentors that I agree with completely on their training and research and experience. One is Michael Dorn. He has a company called Safe Havens International. Safe Havens International is one of the top countries in the world that does the research, has the data, and has done training at all kinds of schools all over the world. And they have different scenarios that they've run and have found out what works and what doesn't work. But they're one of the top agencies in the world. The other one is a guy named Ken Trump. He just got his PhD. He's now Dr. Trump, no relation to the ex-president. He has at least 35, 40 years of experience. He's been in front of Congress. He's a lot on CNN and a lot of the major newspapers. But those two are mentors of mine who I would have anyone go to, email, talk to about if they have any concerns about school safety. If they don't want to talk to me or if they disagree with what I'm saying. But those two guys are your top guys in this country.
And what kind of impact are you having within your own community?
Not much. Since I've left the job, I can't email anyone anymore. They just eliminated the email. When I wrote my book, I couldn't get any endorsements. I think because they disagreed. I asked my son, they're still running options-based training every once in a while because, again, the police took over. So they don't have private citizens in that position anymore. So now your county police run all your school security stuff, which, again, what kind of training do they have? I mean, I was in law enforcement. I want kind of training, but not towards schools. Luckily, we do have school resource officers in every school. And depending on the numbers, I think it's 1,000. Once you get up to 1,000 in high schools, they'll have 2 resource officers in the school. So luckily that is there. But otherwise, no. Myself, I don't have any kind of influence on something like that. I've never been on anything national. I do as many podcasts as I can. But otherwise, there's thousands of voices out there. I try to get my voice out as much as possible on as many podcasts as I can do. Hopefully that someone will tell someone or someone else will say something to someone to maybe get on, nationally. But right now it's just, I do as many as I can to get the word out.
Yeah. And when you reached out to me and told me what you were pushing, you told me about your book, I had to bring you on because, like I said earlier, this is near and dear to my heart, especially with having, my daughters and my son, being in high school, and he's in that age group where that probably happens more in the high school area, doesn't it? And so, yeah, it's kind of in the back of my mind.
Well, it's a hard subject to talk about. So a lot of times you're not going to get the national news to talk about it unless there's an event, unless something happens. Then they'll bring in the so-called experts who probably pay to get on there anyways to talk about, God knows whatever, ex-FBI, ex-so-and-so will get on there and mouth off about something. So it's not something that's just talked about or even debated about or even a panel discussion. And the reason I've asked over and over on every podcast I've done to say, can I get a panel? If you've got someone out there that disagrees with me, that wants to discuss run, hide, fight, or discuss something different, they won't do it. Jonah, the reason they won't do it is because it's going to hurt their business. Yeah. I don't have a business. I don't have that business. So if I have a business that says, no, you should do run, hide, fight, they're not going to get on there with me and argue about it because people are going to go, wait, this guy makes sense. This other guy, run, hide, fight, doesn't make any sense. I'm not going to use him. It's going to ruin their business. So that's why no one will bring me on, because if I get in a panel discussion, they're not going to voice anything because it's going to ruin their business model. And that's why the same thing, even I've had arguments even though you're not supposed to argue on LinkedIn, because LinkedIn's all about, business, and everybody's, kumbaya and, oh, congratulations, you got your whatever business going. And I say, well, it wasn't really a mistake, because I'm going to say what I'm going to say. But I put it out there that a lot of these companies are ambulance chasers. Mm-hmm. I've had companies on there that after Nashville, 2 days after Nashville, advertised that if you used our company, this wouldn't have happened. Those are an actual quote from a company on there going, are you out of your mind? I said, what's the matter with you? You're not going to let now you're going to put the grief even more so on these people? They're already grieving if they have someone that got killed. Now you're going to tell them, oh, look, if you used my company, this never would have happened. Really? That's what you're going to say? And they came right back at me and pulled the victim card, like, oh no, we're just trying to have a business. Like, no, if that's your business, you're wrong. No, you don't do that. You just don't. Okay, a week, 2 weeks later, you might mention something, say, hey, we're sorry this happened, but if you have concerns, give us a call. Don't say, if you used our service, this never would have happened. Your child would still be alive. BS. It's just a bunch of BS.
Well, yeah, because then it puts it in those parents' minds that it's the fault of the board of directors and all that higher ups that they should be searching for these types of things. When we all know, we do have to give some of these board of directors the benefit of doubt, because they have so much on their plate and dealing with all us parents yelling at them, right, because our kids aren't doing as well as they need to be, and we need to be sympathetic to them and their crybaby. Okay, but
I get it.
But I think that we do need to be more involved in those types of meetings and making sure that our voices are heard, because if we all stand up together, what are they going to do? Try to tell us to sit down? We got to be to that point with, ourselves and each other. Us parents have to look after each other because our kids are right next to each other. Right. Susie's sitting right next to Ben, and Ben, sitting right next to Sarah. We all got to watch out for all of them. That's our future. And,
I agree. And I'm sure most of your audience is full of parents that haven't even thought about this. I know, we've gone on, and it is hard to listen to, an hour and a half of a podcast. But, I try to emphasize that, look, just talk to your kids. Find out what's going on. If you disagree with it, go to the school board, send emails to the principal, assistant principal, whoever's in charge, because there will be, especially the bigger schools, you'll have an assistant principal that's in charge of the safety and security. They'll designate it, because most big high schools will have 3 or 4 assistant principals, and they'll designate them to whatever their jobs are. So just get in contact with them and just ask the question. You don't have to be, aggressive, but just say, how are you running your safety drills? Well, we just want to know how you're running it. And if you disagree with it, then and also talk to your legislatures, because a lot of places are legislated that this is the way they have to run it. And a lot of legislatures, as we know, are wrong in doing this. And it should be, I don't want to get the federal government involved. That's one thing I do not want to get involved. It should be a state's issue, a county issue, and how you handle your safety and security protocols at these schools. So get in touch with your state legislatures, however you want to go up the ladder. But again, Jonah, it's going to happen again. And that's usually when the red flags go up. Now, it hasn't happened yet. We're back in school. Most schools are back in now because we're at the end of September. So far we're good. But it's going to happen again. And when the red flags go up, that's when you got to jump on it and find out, how are you running your safety drills at your school?
Yeah, you're right. And you have got it in my head now I want to look for one of this opposite side to try to bring them on to debate you. I might have to try that.
Sure. Yeah. I would love that. Look, I'll take everybody's opinion, and they can decide. Because I tell you what, the devil's advocate of lockdowns is that those kids are sitting ducks in the classroom. That's what I get from a lot of law enforcement. Oh, I'm not going to lock them in that classroom because they're sitting ducks. Well, no, they're not. what data do you have that shows that some shooter has busted through a lock and shot those kids? It's, Sandy Hook, the doors were open. They were unlocked. I said, Parkland, they ran out into the hallways. And he was just shooting them at will. Same thing with Nashville. Same thing with Uvalde. Those doors were unlocked. They haven't shot through a locked door. They're not sitting ducks. 3 to 5 minutes, the police are on their way. I'm not going to have them run out into a hallway. I don't care what you say. Now, you can argue about high school. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt if they want to talk about high schools. But again, I'll still bring up Parkland because that was still a disaster, and that was a big high school. So I welcome that. I welcome someone who has a difference of opinion because then they let the audience decide.
Yeah, it'd be awesome. I want more episodes like that to get both sides of the situation.
Sure, let them decide.
No, but in all seriousness, it's definitely a sobering topic to talk about, and definitely something that needs to be advocated for more. And it ties in hand with a lot of this stuff that we had talked about tonight, from bullying to social media to we could go deep down that rabbit hole, and that would be another hour and a half conversation. But,
It would. But I encourage people not only to read my book. Again, it's only 77 pages long. It's called The First 5 Minutes. It's an active shooter guide for teachers, administrators, but I advocate for parents to read it. Again, it's a quick read. You'll get something out of it. It has a generic safety plan in it, a blank one. It has the downloadable for these cards that you can put on your lanyard. That's just a quick reference card. And it's if you type in The First 5 Minutes on Amazon, it usually will come up in the top 10. I mean, you could try to spell my name in there too, but you can also find me on LinkedIn. I've got a page on there, and my email's on there if you want to contact me. So I would encourage that, again, because the discussion has to continue. It's not something where I understand it's a niche. And that's, again, why it's hard for me to find even podcasts, because I agree. Most don't want to talk about it. It's an uncomfortable subject. Unless you have an audience for that is willing to listen to that, I understand. Why would you want to talk about something like that? Unless, and most of my podcasts have been parents or educators, some law enforcement that want to talk about this because it needs to be put out there to keep yourself safe. So I really appreciate you having me on and taking the time. This is one of the longest I've had on here, and they're giving me a voice. So I really appreciate the time you took. And sure, I'd love to come back on.
Of course, man. And, we talked a little bit about mainstream and how they bring it up when it happens. And so, and when they do bring these experts on, they come up with they have a generic response that they say that's scripted. And, it's a 5-minute segment, and then we're moved on to the lottery numbers. And that's how it's treated. And so, for me, I feel like having these longer discussions, you get a lot more info out. You obviously don't get everything. And that's why, I always advocate to bring my guests back on, because I can always get more info. There's always stuff that I can go back and say, I wish I had this this question answered, or this, and I do that to myself. I will go through, and if somebody comes back on, I'll go back through and I'll get those questions, and I'll make sure to, ask them. And,
sure.
But I think, we did do this is, one of the longer episodes that I've done in a long time. And it's been very, very informational, and it's definitely a conversation that should be heard. And I'll make sure to put all your descriptions down in all your links down in the description. And
thank you.
So what has been the most enlightening moment of this particular journey that you've taken?
Overall, or you mean just in the school safety aspect of it?
We can go overall. Let's go overall.
Overall, it's different things. I'm a lot older than you, So there's different stages of your life that you go through. Some of them, a lot of it, as you know, Jonah, a lot of it's luck and timing.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got on the Secret Service, I was older. I was 10 years older than everyone else that was in my class. And I was allowed opportunities, not only because I had my college degree, which back then very few people had, but because I was older, my supervisor was about the same age as me. So I got opportunities that I would not have gotten if I had joined earlier. And it's not a long story, but I did try to join earlier, 8 years earlier when I was much younger. And I was turned down because I was not heavy enough. Believe it or not, I was too light. It was like the military. I had to gain weight. I was underweight. But it worked out that I got on older and I was given more opportunities. I was the youngest in service to be able to get into canine. I was in public affairs. I had these opportunities that just came out, and found out that my work ethic is what helped. And that was from my dad and my mom. You work hard, you'll get ahead. You just keep pushing. Sometimes you're going to have bosses that are real jerks, and it would rotate. I never had the same bosses, over 2 or 3 years. It was constantly rotating. Sometimes you'd have good bosses. So it all depended on just keep pushing and working hard. And it works out. It works out in the end. And like I said, I look back now, and at times I miss it. At other times, not so much. But it still was a great experience. And even with the schools, like I said, at times I miss it. I loved working with these little kids. I mean, they were just amazing. These elementary school kids and what they do, and how intelligent they are. They're not as naive as you think they are. They know what's going on. They'll tell you. One story before we leave. I had a principal. It's in my book. I had a principal that liked to play tricks on his teachers when he ran a drill, and it was an open atmosphere school, elementary school. And he would go out, every once in a while and do different things for a fire drill. He would block exits. He would do things, anything to just make them think. Anyways, he runs a lockdown drill, and 3/4 of the way through the drill, he goes out in the courtyard with a bullhorn, and he says, "The drill's over. It's okay. Everybody come on out. Go back to class. The drill's over." All his permanent teachers knew it was a trick and stayed in the lockdown. He had 3 substitute teachers that said, "Oh, okay, we're back to school, kids. Come on." And those kids all stood up and said, No, it's a trick. It's a trick. Don't listen to them. They knew in a lockdown, you don't listen to any announcements. You don't listen to any fire alarms. You don't listen to anything. You stay in a lockdown. So these kids know what's going on. So this idea that you're going to raise anxiety or, oh my gosh, pull my kid out because there's going to be a drill. No, these kids are more sophisticated than that. I mean, they know what's going on. So anyways, I know back to your question. I've been blessed. I really have. So I am glad that I get to do this. It's something I'm very passionate about. As you know, I have a son in high school, and it's something that I just try to get the message out. I'm not in it for the money. I'm not here to sell books. It's a 77-page guidebook. I'm not here to sell books. I'm here to sell awareness and just promote the idea that you can get the confidence to lock down when something bad happens. You can do it.
Yeah. And I appreciate you taking the time and coming on and definitely advocating for this. And we probably need more people doing that. And, I'm happy that I can at least do my part in it and give the platform to you. And, and if there's more people out there that, have the same views, you can contact me and I'd love to bring you on. And if you are that person out there that listens to this and you have that opposing view, you get a hold of me and I will damn sure bring you on, because I want to get into the opposite sides of things debates. I've talked to so many people that, in your same shoes that, they say, find somebody and just bring them on to it and just get that opposite side. And when you do find that opposite side, they don't want to come on and debate things. It's insane. And so I'm trying to push more for that. And I do have spoiler alert for people out there, I do have some work into progress for that stuff. But, this season of the show is more about breaking the chain of, a lot of us content creators self-censor because we're so worried about getting canceled and getting taken off or there's so many platforms out there. You're going to get your message out and you're going to find your following. And we got to remember to just be ourselves and to break the chains of this crap that we call censorship and make sure that we're having these tough conversations because they got to be had. And, we can't censor this kind of stuff, especially when it comes to our little baby safety. That's something that we shouldn't take lighthearted at all, is this bullying and all these school shootings and things of that nature. Our kids' safety should be paramount above everything. So,
yes,
I appreciate you doing that. And I'm gonna, your book is on my list to get. So
good. Okay.
The wife was interested in coming on and co-hosting tonight, but she wasn't able to because the girls wanted to take over what mom was.
That's right, Jonah. Next time.
Yeah. But I appreciate you again. And like I said, I'll put all those links down in the description, and I hope for future conversations here soon. And, once we stop here, we'll let everything download and we'll get you on your way, man.
Terrific. Thank you so much for having me on. Appreciate it, Jonah.
Of course. All right. Bye, everybody. That's all the time we have for today. Head over and check out our website, thebceshow.com, where you can subscribe to the email list and contact us. But remember to leave us a rate and review. Helps the podcast with that pesky algorithm. Thanks for listening, y'all.